It was a hot summer afternoon in Fort Worth, Texas, 1971. A young mother, desperate to keep her job, handed her 22-month-old daughter to a babysitter she had never met in person. Just a few hours later, the child was gone. No ransom note, no witnesses, no trace. The woman who took baby Melissa Highsmith simply vanished. Days turned into weeks, weeks into decades. And as the years passed, the mother's cries were drowned in silence. Law enforcement hit dead end after dead end. The public forgot, but the family never did. Then, 51 years later, a random DNA test exposed a secret that had been buried for half a century. The truth was darker than anyone imagined, and more heartbreaking than anyone was prepared for. This is the story of the longest missing child recovery in American history, and the unimaginable twist that brought it all to light.
Unbelievable reunion. Melissa Highsmith, only a baby when she was kidnapped from her
Fort Worth woman missing for 51 years, and the beautiful moment of being reunited with her family. It's grabbed our hearts, and like many of us, the family, though, with all of this wants answers. How does a baby disappear only to be found?
It was August 23, 1971. Alta Apantenko had just moved to Fort Worth, Texas. Recently separated, working as a waitress, and struggling to stay afloat, she faced a problem many single parents can relate to: finding childcare on short notice. Desperate to keep her job, Alta placed an ad in the local newspaper, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, looking for a babysitter. A woman responded quickly, claiming she had experience and loved children. She sounded kind, confident, but something was off. She didn't want to meet Alta in person. Instead, she offered to pick up the baby from Alta's roommate. Against her better judgment, but with no other options, Alta agreed. That morning, the mysterious woman arrived at the apartment on East Seminary Drive. Melissa, just 22 months old, was dressed in a cute pink dress, white sandals, and her tiny birthmark still visible on her back. She was last seen in her mother's arms. Before being handed over to a complete stranger, no one ever saw Melissa Highsmith again. When Alta returned home later that day, she was expecting to hear her daughter's laughter echoing through the apartment, but instead there was only silence and panic. The babysitter never came back. Alta called the police. But in 1971, there was no Amber Alert, no viral social media campaigns. The case was treated as a potential custodial dispute. Officers told Alta maybe the sitter had simply gotten confused or delayed. But Alta knew. She knew something terrible had happened, and she was right. Within hours of Melissa's disappearance, the Fort Worth Police Department opened an investigation. But in those early days, everything that could go wrong did. The babysitter's name? Fake. Phone number? Disconnected. No fingerprints, no license plate, no eyewitnesses. Nothing. Flyers were printed, tips were called in, and officers canvassed neighborhoods, but there was no trace of Melissa. The case went public fast, and headlines spread the chilling truth. A toddler had been taken by a total stranger and vanished without a sound. Soon, the case caught the attention of national outlets. Volunteers flooded the streets. Truck stops, diners, bus stations, anywhere a woman might be hiding with a child, police checked. Still, there were no solid leads. One of the earliest tips came from Charleston, South Carolina. A waitress believed she had served a woman and a toddler matching Melissa's description. That tip turned cold. Then came reports from California, Florida, even Canada. Each one led to a surge of hope, followed by devastating disappointment. As the years passed, new detectives inherited the case. Some chased false confessions, others revisited witness statements. But it all came down to the same painful truth. No one knew what happened to Melissa Highsmith. For Alta, the pain was unbearable. Rumors swirled. Some people whispered she had given Melissa away, or worse. The guilt consumed her. Every birthday, every holiday, every sleepless night, she lived them all with the question, is my daughter still alive? The Highsmith family was stuck in a nightmare that never ended. And slowly, the world moved on. The case went cold. But Alta never stopped searching. Time did not heal the wound. It only made it deeper. As the 1980s rolled in and the case grew colder, the Highsmith family refused to let Melissa's memory fade. Alta never moved far. She kept Melissa's baby photos in her wallet, her clothes in storage, and her name alive in every conversation. She refused to give up. Not after 1 year, not after 5, not even after 50. Each family member carried the weight in their own way. Melissa's siblings, some born after she vanished, grew up haunted by a missing sister they'd never met. Their family gatherings always left one seat emotionally empty. But the world was changing. In the early 2000s, as DNA testing advanced and ancestry databases exploded in popularity, new hope emerged. Websites like Ancestry DNA and 23andMe weren't just helping people trace their roots, they were quietly solving cold cases. And the Highsmiths took notice. They began researching genetic genealogy. They learned how distant relatives could be matched through DNA databases, even without the victim's DNA. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. In 2020, the family submitted their DNA to GEmatch, an open-source database used by both genealogists and law enforcement. They uploaded profiles, searched distant matches, and joined online communities of families chasing shadows. Months passed. Nothing happened. Then, in late 2022, 51 years after Melissa vanished, a message arrived. A distant match. Someone out there was connected. Her name was Melanie Walden. She'd lived her entire life believing a lie, raised in South Carolina, thinking her family history was normal. But something never quite felt right. There were no baby pictures before a certain age. Her birth certificate looked strange, and her so-called mother rarely spoke about the past. By 2022, curiosity turned into suspicion. Melanie decided to submit her DNA to 23andMe, not to find out about a crime, but to uncover her ancestry. What she found changed everything. A close match popped up almost instantly. It wasn't distant. It wasn't vague. It was undeniable. She was genetically linked to the Highsmith family. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but then came more matches, more names, siblings, a mother, a family she had never met, people who had been searching for her for over 5 decades. The Highsmiths were stunned, at first cautious. After so many false hopes, was this real? They reached out carefully, gently. DNA confirmed the impossible. Melanie Walden was Melissa Highsmith. On November 26, 2022, in an emotional reunion that no one thought would ever happen, Melissa was reunited with her mother, Alta, and her siblings 51 years after she was kidnapped. Tears flowed freely. Alta clutched her daughter as if time could rewind if she just held her tight enough. Melissa, overwhelmed, confessed she had no idea, no suspicion, that she had ever been abducted. She had lived her entire life under a false name, in a false identity, not knowing that her real family had been crying for her for over half a century. No one could believe it. But the DNA didn't lie. After the reunion, one question lingered like smoke in a burned-out room. Who took Melissa Highsmith, and why? The woman who abducted her, believed to be a friend or acquaintance of Alta's former roommate, had vanished from Fort Worth shortly after Melissa disappeared. For decades, investigators couldn't find her, and incredibly, she was never arrested. It turns out, the kidnapper raised Melissa as her own. Melissa says she was brought up in an unstable environment filled with emotional abuse and secrecy. She didn't go by the name Melissa. She lived as Melanie Walden, never knowing she was the center of a decades-long national manhunt. Despite the emotional toll, Melissa never faced physical harm. But she was robbed of the truth, her family, and the life that was rightfully hers. The FBI confirmed the identity through DNA and closed the missing persons case. Yet, justice was never truly served. Due to the statute of limitations on kidnapping in Texas, just 5 years at the time, prosecutors announced that no charges would be filed. That's right, a woman kidnapped a baby, raised her under a false identity for 51 years, and walked away with no legal consequences. To this day, Melissa has chosen not to reveal the identity of the woman who raised her. She said publicly that she wants healing, not revenge. And perhaps, after decades of pain, that's the most powerful decision she could make. But for Alta and the Highsmith family, one truth is now forever clear. Melissa was never lost. She was stolen. Melissa Highsmith's story isn't just about a child who was kidnapped. It's about a family that refused to give up, about technology catching up with justice, and about how one act of truth, even after 51 years, can rewrite a lifetime of lies. Her case has since inspired thousands of families with missing loved ones to turn to DNA databases, genetic genealogy, and online sleuth communities. It showed the world that cold cases are never truly cold, not as long as someone is still searching. Today, Melissa is rebuilding her identity. She's reconnecting with her siblings. She's healing with her mother. She's learning what it means to reclaim a life that was stolen, piece by piece. And Alta? After half a century of heartbreak, she finally has her daughter back. Imagine walking to the school bus just like every other day, when suddenly a car pulls up, a man jumps out, and your world is ripped away forever. No goodbyes, no warnings, just darkness. JC Dugard was only 11 years old when she vanished in broad daylight. For 18 years, no one heard her voice, no one saw her face. And the most shocking part, she was just a few miles away the entire time. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear is one of the most harrowing kidnapping stories in modern American history, filled with twisted manipulation, survival against all odds, and a rescue that stunned the world. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us every week as we uncover the most chilling true crime cases. It was June 10th, 1991. JC Lee Dugard, a bright and shy fifth grader, left her South Lake Tahoe home in California, walking to catch her school bus. Her stepfather, Carl Probin, watched from the window, something he would replay in his mind for nearly 2 decades. But within moments, everything changed. A gray sedan pulled up. A man opened the door, stunned her with a taser, and dragged her inside. The car sped off as Carl ran after it on his bicycle, helpless and heartbroken. JC was gone, just like that. An intense search was launched. Helicopters, search dogs, volunteers combing the woods, nothing. For weeks, her face was on every television and newspaper, but leads dried up and hope began to fade. Meanwhile, JC was being held captive, only 170 miles away. Her captors were Philip and Nancy Garrido, a seemingly ordinary couple living in Antioch, California. But what lurked behind their backyard was anything but ordinary. They had constructed a hidden compound behind their home, tents, sheds, and high fencing, completely out of view. This is where JC would spend the next 18 years. Philip Garrido was a convicted rapist with a disturbing obsession. He believed he was on a divine mission, that God spoke to him. JC was forced to call him master and was forbidden to speak her own name. For years, she wasn't even aware people were still searching for her. Worse yet, she was sexually abused repeatedly. By age 14, she gave birth to her first daughter. At 17, she had a second child. These children would grow up never knowing the world outside their tiny, suffocating prison. JC survived not just for herself, but for her daughters. She built a world for them, teaching them to read, write, and hope, all while trapped in a nightmare. What makes this case even more heartbreaking is how many chances were missed. Over the years, parole officers visited Garrido's home, yet never once checked the backyard. Neighbors grew suspicious of the tents and strange behavior, but their complaints were often dismissed. In 2006, a neighbor called 911 after seeing children in the backyard who looked pale and scared. Still, nothing came of it. So how did JC finally escape? Ironically, it was Garrido himself who led the authorities to the truth. In August 2009, Philip Garrido brought his 2 daughters, JC's daughters, to a University of California, Berkeley campus to promote his religious ideas. His behavior was erratic and unsettling, catching the attention of campus security. They contacted his parole officer, and Garrido was called in for questioning. He showed up with JC, now 29, and her 2 daughters. When asked who JC was, she gave a fake name. But under pressure, her facade cracked. Eventually, she uttered the words no one expected, "I'm JC Dugard." The room went silent. 18 years of mystery solved in one breath. The nation was stunned. JC was alive. Her mother, Terry Probin, received the phone call she had only dreamed of. The reunion was emotional, powerful, and almost surreal. Philip and Nancy Garrido were arrested and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping and sexual assault. Philip was sentenced to 431 years to life. Nancy received 36 years to life. But for JC, the journey wasn't over. She had to learn how to live again, how to use her real name, how to drive, socialize, and trust. Her daughters had to be introduced to a world they never knew existed. JC would go on to write a memoir, A Stolen Life, where she bravely shared every horrifying detail, helping other survivors and shedding light on how predators operate in plain sight. JC Dugard's story is one of unimaginable trauma, but also of incredible strength. Despite the horror, she emerged not as a victim, but as a warrior. Her voice, once silenced, now speaks for thousands. If you found this story powerful, take a moment to honor survivors like JC by sharing this video, and let us know in the comments. How would you improve law enforcement systems to prevent such tragedies? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that needs to be told. Because sometimes the truth is more terrifying than fiction.